I found my wife leading a secret cult using our family basement daily. It was the smell that got me first. A cloying, sickly sweet incense I'd never seen her buy, mixed with something sharp, almost metallic, like old pennies and sweat. It seeped under the basement door, a phantom limb of a scent that clung to the air in our usually sterile suburban ranch house. I'd come home early that Tuesday. A meeting at the firm had wrapped up faster than a speeding bullet, and I just wanted to crash on the couch with a beer and catch the end of the game. But the house was quiet, eerily so. No TV, no music, just that smell. And a low, rhythmic chanting, barely audible through the thick concrete. My gut twisted. It wasn't the hum of the washing machine, not the furnace kicking on. This was deliberate. Before I go any further, seriously, if you're digging this vibe, if you're feeling that knot in your stomach right along with me, hit that subscribe button. And while you're at it, a quick like and a share would mean the world. Seriously, your comments too. I want to hear what you guys think is going on. Is it just me, or is this some next level messed up? So yeah, subscribe, like, share, comment. Let's get back to this nightmare. I walked down the hall, the sound growing more distinct, like a distorted lullaby sung by 100 distant voices. My heart was already thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Sarah. Where was Sarah? She was supposed to be at her book club, the one she'd been gushing about for weeks, with the intense, almost fanatical discussions. I'd always thought it was just her way of blowing off steam, a few hours of girl talk to escape the daily grind of PTA meetings and grocery lists. Now, standing at the top of the basement stairs, that sweet, metallic smell filling my nostrils, I wasn't so sure. The chanting was clearer now, a low, droning murmur, punctuated by, was that a bell? A small, tinkling bell, like you'd hear in a boutique shop, but utterly out of place down here. Our basement was unfinished, a dusty expanse of concrete floors, exposed pipes, and cobwebs. It was where we stored Christmas decorations, old college textbooks, and Sarah's abandoned pottery wheel from that phase she went through. It wasn't a place for whatever this was. I gripped the wooden handrail, my knuckles white. A cold dread was starting to snake its way up my spine. I'd always seen Sarah as my rock, my steady presence. We'd built this life together, brick by sensible brick. 2 kids, a dog, a house with a decent yard, and a town that barely made the news. Our life was normal, predictable, and I loved it. I loved her, or at least, I thought I did. This felt wrong, deeply, fundamentally wrong. I took a breath, trying to calm the rising panic. Maybe she just decided to have a spontaneous something, a crafting session with friends. But the chanting, Sarah, that wasn't crafting. That was something else. I pushed the basement door open. It groaned on its hinges, a mournful sound that echoed in the sudden silence that fell from below. The chanting stopped. The bell went silent. The smell, though, it intensified, thick, heavy, suffocating. I flicked on the bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. Dust motes danced in the harsh light. The concrete floor stretched out before me, littered with boxes and forgotten furniture. And in the center of it all, illuminated by the single bulb, was a circle. A chalk circle drawn with meticulous precision on the concrete. And inside the circle, on a small ornate rug I'd never seen before, sat Sarah. She was wearing a long, flowing white robe, the kind you might see in an old movie about ancient rituals. Her usually blonde hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her eyes were closed, her face tilted upwards as if basking in an unseen light. Around her, arranged in a semicircle facing her, were people. About a dozen of them, men and women, all dressed in similar, simple, dark clothing. Their faces were rapt, their expressions a mixture of awe and something bordering on worship. One woman, her face pale and gaunt, clutched a small tarnished silver locket. A man, his shoulders hunched, held his hands clasped tightly over his chest. They were all looking at Sarah, waiting. My mind reeled. This wasn't a book club. This wasn't a crafting session. This was something I couldn't even begin to comprehend. My Sarah, my wife, the woman who organized carpool and worried about her cholesterol and always left the toilet seat up? This was not that woman.
The air crackled with an unspoken energy, a strange, almost electric hum that vibrated in my bones. I stood frozen in the doorway, a ghost in my own home, watching my wife perform some bizarre, clandestine ceremony. Then, slowly, Sarah's eyes opened. They were not the soft, familiar blue I knew. They were wide, intense, and fixed on me. A flicker of something unreadable crossed her face. Surprise? Annoyance? Fear? But it was gone in an instant, replaced by a serene, almost beatific smile. It was the smile of a queen addressing her devoted subjects, not the smile she gave me when I told her I'd forgotten to pick up milk. "Daniel," she said, her voice calm, measured, and yet somehow amplified, resonating in the stillness. It was softer than usual, yet carried an authority I'd never heard before. "You're early." The people in the semicircle turned, their eyes now fixed on me. A wave of discomfort washed over me, a primal urge to flee, to pretend I hadn't seen anything. But my feet were rooted to the spot. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion and disbelief. Who were these people? What were they doing? And what the hell was Sarah doing leading them? "What is this, Sarah?" I managed to choke out, my voice a rough rasp. It sounded alien in the charged atmosphere. She tilted her head, her serene smile unwavering. "This, Daniel," she said, her gaze sweeping over the assembled figures, "is a convergence."
A moment of shared understanding. Shared understanding? I repeated, my voice rising slightly, betraying the tremor in my hands. It looks like a cult, Sarah. What are you doing? A ripple went through the group. A few of the faces tightened, their eyes narrowing with a subtle defensiveness. Sarah, however, remained unruffled. She rose slowly from the rug, her movements fluid and graceful, like a dancer. She stepped out of the chalk circle, her white robe shimmering in the dim light. She walked towards me, her gaze never leaving mine. "A cult is a word used by those who don't understand," she said softly as she reached the bottom of the stairs. "This is about connection, about unlocking potential." "Unlocking potential?" I scoffed, the disbelief warring with a burgeoning anger. "By chanting in our basement in your fancy dress?" Her smile didn't waver, but a hint of steel entered her tone. "It's not just chanting, Daniel. It's resonance. It's aligning our energies." I stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman in front of me with the woman I'd married. The woman who'd cried watching Titanic, who got stressed about her taxes, who always hummed off-key when she was happy. This woman, bathed in the dim, dusty light of our basement, exuded a strained, almost otherworldly aura. "Energies?" I repeated, feeling increasingly ridiculous. "Sarah, what are you talking about? Who are these people? Where did you get that rug and that smell?" She paused, a slight frown finally creasing her brow. "The smell is lavender and sage, Daniel. It's cleansing. The rug is an altar cloth, and these are seekers, people who are ready for something more." "More than what?" I demanded, my voice cracking. "More than our life? More than our family?" Her eyes softened for a fleeting moment, a flicker of the old Sarah. "It's not about leaving anything behind, Daniel. It's about expanding." But the serene mask was back in place. She reached out and gently touched my arm. Her skin was cool, almost unnervingly so. "You shouldn't be here, Daniel. This is not something you're ready to understand." "Not ready to understand?" The anger flared, hot and sharp. "I found my wife leading some bizarre ritual in our basement with a dozen strangers. I think I'm pretty damn ready to understand what the hell is going on." The faces of the seekers shifted, a murmur of unease passing through them. Sarah's hand tightened on my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Daniel, please," she whispered, her voice laced with a new urgency. "We can talk about this later. You're disrupting the focus. You're creating dissonance." Dissonance. The word hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. I felt a surge of betrayal, of being an outsider in my own home. "Disrupting? I'm your husband, Sarah. I'm supposed to be part of this life, not crashing it." She pulled her hand away, her serene smile replaced by a look of profound disappointment. "You don't see it, do you, Daniel? You're still trapped in the old ways, the material world. You can't grasp the deeper truths. Deeper truths? I laughed, a harsh, hollow sound. The only truth I see is that you're hiding something from me, something big, and it involves strangers chanting in our basement. One of the men, a burly guy with a shaved head, stepped forward, his jaw tight. "You will show respect," he said, his voice a low growl. I turned to him, my heart pounding. "And who the hell are you to tell me anything?" Sarah quickly stepped between us. "He is a guest, Mark, and I will handle this." She turned back to me, her eyes hard now. "You've made your presence known, Daniel. You've broken the stillness. Now you must leave." "Leave?" I was incredulous. "This is my house." "For now," she said, her voice chillingly calm. "But you are not welcome here, not tonight. You are disrupting the energy." The other seekers were watching me, their expressions now a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. They were no longer passive followers. They were a collective, their attention focused on me as an unwelcome intrusion. The metallic tang in the air seemed to sharpen, the incense growing more potent, almost nauseating. I felt a wave of heat wash over me, a sense of being judged, of being less than. "You're serious," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "You're kicking me out of my own home because I interrupted your energy alignment?" Sarah didn't answer. She simply stood there, her gaze unwavering, a strange mix of compassion and absolute resolve in her eyes. It was the look of someone who had made a terrible, irrevocable decision. The chalk circle, the ornate rug, the white robe, the hushed reverence of the seekers, it all coalesced into a terrifying reality. My wife, the woman I thought I knew inside and out, was leading a double life, a secret life that had been playing out just feet beneath our bedrooms for God knows how long. And now here I was, standing at the threshold of her secret world, a world I was clearly not invited to. The sheer audacity of it, the betrayal, the sheer alienness of the scene washed over me in a tidal wave of shock and horror. I looked at her, at the serene, unyielding face, and for the first time, I truly felt like I was looking at a stranger. The chanting had stopped, but the silence that replaced it was deafening, pregnant with unspoken threats and a profound sense of loss. I was at a precipice, and I had no idea where to fall. The air in the basement, thick with that nauseating perfume of lavender, sage, and something else I couldn't quite place, stale sweat maybe, or the metallic tang of fear, clung to me like a shroud as I stumbled back up the stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last, my legs like lead, my lungs burning with the effort of breathing air that suddenly felt contaminated. The basement door creaked shut behind me, a final, definitive sound that sealed me out of a world I'd never known existed, a world that had been unfolding right under my nose. I stood in the hallway, the familiar beige carpet and framed family photos suddenly feeling like a stage set, a flimsy facade over a deep, dark chasm. The rhythmic chanting was gone, replaced by a silence that was even more unsettling, a silence that hummed with unspoken power and Sarah's absolute, unyielding certainty. My mind raced, a chaotic jumble of images. Sarah in her white robe, her eyes like polished obsidian, the semicircle of faces, unnervingly serene or taut with devotion. The chalk circle, so precise, so deliberate. It wasn't just some quirky spiritual phase, some new age fad. This was organized. This was a movement, and Sarah was at its head. My Sarah. The woman who fretted over our daughter's grades, who agonized over organic kale, who always remembered to pack the extra socks for soccer practice. How could she be this person, this leader? I walked into the living room, the scent of stale beer from the game I'd missed, a faint, pathetic reminder of the normal evening I'd anticipated. The TV screen was dark. The cushions on the sofa were slightly askew, as if someone had recently sat there, perhaps watching, perhaps waiting. Waiting for what? For me to discover her secret? Or for me to disappear? The thought sent a fresh wave of ice through my veins. Sarah had told me to leave, not just leave the basement, but leave the house. You're not welcome here, not tonight. Her words, calm and cool, echoed it in my head. The absolute authority in her voice, the utter lack of apology, was more devastating than any outburst could have been. I sank onto the sofa, the worn fabric offering no comfort. Guilt gnawed at me. Had I missed something? Had there been signs I'd brushed aside, blinded by the comfort of our predictable life? Her late nights, always explained away as personal projects or research. Her increasing distance, attributed to stress from work. The new friends she'd mentioned, vague acquaintances whose names I never quite caught. I'd been so wrapped up in my own world, the deadlines at the firm, the golf course, the illusion of control, that I'd let her slip away, or worse, transform into someone I didn't recognize. My gaze fell on a small, elegant vase on the coffee table. Sarah had brought it home a few weeks ago. It was a deep, swirling indigo, unlike anything she usually bought. I'd asked her about it, and she just smiled that vague, slightly distant smile and said it was a gift from a new friend. A seeker, no doubt. A disciple. The metallic scent from the basement seemed to waft around me, even here, a phantom reminder of the rot that had set in. I felt a surge of anger, hot and righteous, quickly followed by a crushing wave of despair. This wasn't just about Sarah's peculiar hobbies. This was about betrayal, about lies. About a foundation I thought was solid, cracking and crumbling beneath me. What about the kids? Lily and Noah? They were upstairs, asleep, oblivious to the seismic shift that had occurred in their parents' lives. How could I protect them from this? How could I explain that their mother was involved in whatever this was? Would they be safe? Would they be indoctrinated? The thought of Lily's innocent smile and Noah's boisterous laughter being twisted into the rapt expressions of those seekers downstairs made my stomach clench. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking. Who do I call? The police? What would I even say? My wife is leading a secret cult in our basement? They'd think I was drunk or insane. My friends? They'd either laugh it off or look at me with pity. The guy whose wife had lost her marbles? My parents? They'd immediately want to come over to help, which would only escalate the situation and force me to confront Sarah when I wasn't ready. I needed to think. I needed clarity. But my mind was a battlefield, emotions warring for dominance, confusion, rage, fear, and a deep, aching sadness for the life I thought we had. I got up and walked to the kitchen, pouring myself a glass of water, my hand trembling as I brought it to my lips. The refrigerator hummed, a mundane, reassuring sound that felt like a relic from another era. On the door, held by a magnet shaped like a cartoon cat, was a grocery list. Milk, eggs, bread, toilet paper. Our ordinary life reduced to a mundane checklist. And Sarah, the architect of this normalcy, was apparently orchestrating something far more sinister. I remembered a conversation from a few months ago. Sarah had been unusually withdrawn, almost melancholic. I'd asked her what was wrong, and she'd said, "I just feel disconnected, Daniel, like I'm not living my true purpose." I'd patted her hand and told her she was doing a great job as a mom and wife, that she was everything to us. I thought she was talking about career aspirations, a desire for more than the suburban routine. I hadn't realized she was talking about something as profound, as terrifyingly real as this. My gaze swept over the kitchen counter. There, nestled amongst the usual mail and flyers, was a small, leather-bound journal. It wasn't Sarah's usual brightly colored planner. This was dark, almost black, with an embossed symbol I didn't recognize on the cover, a stylized spiral in a circle. My heart pounded. Could this be it? The key? The record of her descent into this organization? Hesitantly, my fingers tracing the cool leather, I picked it up. It felt heavy, significant. As I opened it, the faint, sickly sweet scent from the basement seemed to emanate from its pages. The handwriting inside was Sarah's, but it was different too, sharper, more fervent, the loops and curves of her familiar script now imbued with an intense urgency. The ink was a deep, almost black hue. I scanned the first few pages, my eyes darting across the dense script. Day 7, one entry read, "The resonance is growing. The collective feels it too. The veil is thinning. He is so close to understanding, but his earthbound attachments hold him back. He cannot yet see the light. Who was he? Was she talking about me? Earthbound attachments? Was that supposed to be me? The anchor dragging her down from her cosmic enlightenment? Another entry. Elias guided me. His wisdom is ancient, pure. He sees the path forward, the ascension we are all striving for. The discordance in Daniel's energy is a challenge, but not insurmountable. He must learn to let go of his material obsessions. The material world is a cage. Elias. That must be the leader she'd mentioned in passing weeks ago, the one she met at that leadership seminar she'd attended upstate. A seminar I now realized with a sickening jolt that had lasted 3 days and involved no cell service. I flipped further, my fingers fumbling, the journal's pages blurring before my eyes. My breath hitched. An entry dated just last week. The weekend gathering was powerful. The cleansing ritual under the full moon prepared us. Daniel suspects nothing. He is so consumed by his own reality, he cannot perceive the grander design. The final preparation is at hand. The shift is coming, and we will be ready. The shift, the final preparation. What did it all mean? It sounded apocalyptic, like something out of a doomsday prophecy. And Sarah, my Sarah, was not just a participant. She was a key player, a facilitator. My wife, the woman who believed in the power of a good night's sleep and a balanced diet, was now talking about ascension and cleansing rituals. A sudden noise from upstairs jolted me, a floorboard creaking. Noah. He must have woken up. My heart leaped into my throat. I quickly closed the journal, shoving it back onto the counter as if it were radioactive. I needed to be a parent. I needed to put this out of my mind at least for a few minutes. I forced a smile onto my face, a brittle mask of normalcy, and headed for the stairs, my legs still feeling heavy, my mind still reeling from the unsettling revelations. As I reached the landing, Noah's door was slightly ajar. He was sitting up in bed, rubbing his eyes, his small body silhouetted against the dim nightlight. "Dad?" he whispered, his voice thick with sleep. "Hey, buddy," I said, forcing a cheerfulness I didn't feel. "Couldn't sleep?" He shook his head, his brow furrowed. I heard voices from downstairs. My blood ran cold. He'd heard them. The chanting, the bell. "Oh, that was just Mom and some friends," I said, my voice a little too loud, a little too strained. "They were practicing a new song for something. You know how Mom likes her music." Noah looked unconvinced, his small face a mask of childish suspicion. "It didn't sound like music, Dad. It sounded weird." It was just experimental, I improvised, my mind racing for a believable excuse. You know how creative your mother is. She gets inspired by all sorts of things. I walked over and sat on the edge of his bed, pulling him into a hug. He felt so small, so fragile. "Go back to sleep, okay? Everything's fine." He nestled into me for a moment, then pulled back. "But what about the smell, Dad? It smelled funny, like incense." My stomach clenched. He'd noticed the smell too. The smell of Sarah's secret life. "Yeah, well, Mom tried a new air freshener. Sometimes they can be a bit strong." I smoothed his hair, trying to project an aura of calm that was miles away from my internal turmoil. "Go to sleep, champ. I'm right here." He eventually settled back down, his breathing evening out into the steady rhythm of sleep. But I couldn't shake the image of those faces downstairs, the certainty in Sarah's eyes, the cryptic journal entries. This wasn't just a phase, this was a deep, dangerous commitment. And the fact that Noah had heard and smelled it, that he'd registered the weirdness, was terrifying. I got up and walked out of his room, closing the door softly behind me. I descended the stairs again, my steps deliberate this time. I went back to the kitchen. The journal sat there, a silent, ominous presence. I picked it up again, my resolve hardening. I had to know more. I had to understand the full extent of what I was up against. I flipped through the pages, searching for more clues, for a timeline, for a plan. Then my eyes landed on a page with a list of names, each one followed by a date and a brief annotation. Mark, August 14th, initial attunement, positive signs. Eleanor, August 19th, deepened connection, ready for the next stage. And then, further down the list, a name that made my breath catch. Daniel, TBD, further observation required. His resistance is significant. TBD, to be determined, further observation. My own name. They were watching me, observing me, not as a husband, but as a subject, a variable in Sarah's grand experiment, a creature of the material world that needed to be observed, perhaps broken down,
perhaps converted. A cold dread seeped into my bones, a fear that was far more profound than anything I'd felt before. This wasn't just about Sarah's spiritual awakening. This was about me, my place in this new, terrifying reality. Was I a convert in waiting, or was I an obstacle to be removed? I slammed the journal shut, the sound echoing in the silent house. The weight of it all was crushing. My wife, the woman I loved, was part of a clandestine group led by a man named Elias who believed I was an impediment to their ascension. They were watching me, waiting, and Sarah, my Sarah, was complicit. The sheer scale of the deception, the depth of her betrayal, was an abyss I was only just beginning to glimpse.
I looked out the kitchen window, the familiar suburban street bathed in the pale moonlight, and for the first time, it looked foreign, menacing. This wasn't my safe haven anymore. This was the hunting ground, and I was the prey. I had to get out. I had to escape. But where? And how? How do you escape a cult that has infiltrated your own home, your own marriage, your own life? The silence of the house pressed in, and in that silence, I heard only one terrifying question echoing. What happens when further observation is no longer enough? The night stretched out before me, a vast, inky expanse, mirroring the emptiness that had begun to bloom in my chest. I couldn't stay here. Not anymore. The air in the kitchen felt heavy, suffocating, as if the very walls were complicit in the elaborate charade. Every shadow seemed to hold a hidden observer, every creak of the house a whispered judgment. I felt like a character trapped in a nightmare, the rules of reality twisted into something unrecognizable. The thought of Sarah, of our life together, of the years I'd poured into building this sanctuary, felt like a cruel joke. Every shared laugh, every whispered confession, every mundane argument about who left the toilet seat up, all of it was tainted now, a performance I'd unknowingly participated in. My hands fumbled with my keys, the cold metal a stark contrast to the feverish heat in my brain. I needed to get out, to breathe air that wasn't thick with deceit and the phantom scent of sage and fear. I grabbed my jacket from the hook by the door, the familiar way a small comfort, a reminder of a life that still, somewhere, felt real. I didn't bother with my wallet. I didn't need it. All I needed was to put distance between myself and this house, this monument to my blindness. The front door clicked shut behind me, the sound unnervingly loud in the stillness of the night. I didn't look back. I just walked, my pace quickening with each stride, the suburban streetlights blurring into streaks of yellow light. The houses I passed, usually so familiar and comforting, now seemed alien, their darkened windows like vacant eyes. Were other husbands and wives in these houses living parallel lives, unaware of the chasms that could open beneath them? I found myself walking towards downtown, drawn by the faint glow of streetlights and the distant hum of the city. My car was parked a few blocks from the house, a necessary precaution, a secret escape route I'd established months ago during one of Sarah's extended spiritual retreats upstate. Now it felt like a lifeline. I reached it, the worn leather of the driver's seat a familiar embrace. The engine turning over was a roar of defiance against the suffocating silence I'd left behind. I drove aimlessly at first, the city lights a kaleidoscope of fractured beauty. My thoughts were a relentless storm, a hurricane of guilt, anger, and a profound sense of loss. How could I have been so oblivious? So utterly, spectacularly blind? Sarah, my wife, the mother of my children, was involved in something so far beyond my comprehension, so diametrically opposed to everything I thought we stood for. The image of her in that white robe, her eyes fixed on something I couldn't see, haunted me. It wasn't just a hobby, it was a complete paradigm shift, a rejection of the life we had built. My mind kept returning to Elias, the wise guide, the man who saw me as an obstacle. The thought of him, Whoever he was, dictating Sarah's actions, influencing her every thought, made my blood boil. And Sarah's complicity, her willing participation in making me out to be some kind of spiritual impediment, it was a betrayal that cut deeper than any physical infidelity could have. It was a violation of our shared reality, a demolition of the very foundation of our marriage. I pulled over to the side of the road, the engine idling, the rhythmic thrum a strange counterpoint to the chaotic rhythm of my own heartbeat. I stared at the neon signs of a 24-hour diner across the street, the garish colors a stark contrast to the darkness I felt inside. I needed to think. I needed a plan. But my mind was too fractured, too overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the betrayal. The children, Lily and Noah, they were still upstairs, asleep in their beds, blissfully unaware of the storm that had broken over their family. The thought of them sent a fresh wave of panic through me. What would happen to them? Would Sarah's newfound devotion extend to them? Would she try to indoctrinate them into Elias's world? The idea of Lily's innocent trust being twisted, of Noah's boisterous energy being suppressed in the name of some esoteric enlightenment was unbearable. I had to protect them. That was my immediate priority. But how? Sarah had effectively isolated herself, and by extension us, from the outside world. Her new friends, her secretive activities, they had created a barrier that was now impenetrable. I couldn't just storm back into the house and demand answers. She wouldn't give them. Not willingly, not anymore. The journal, the leather-bound journal, it was the key. It held the answers I desperately needed, the roadmap to Sarah's transformation. I had to get it. But I couldn't go back right now, not while she was still there, while the echoes of that basement ritual still lingered in the air. I decided to go to a motel, a cheap, anonymous place where I could gather my thoughts without the suffocating weight of our shared history. I found one a few miles down the road, its flickering neon sign a beacon in the darkness. The room was basic, sterile, smelling faintly of cleaning fluid and stale cigarette smoke. But it was mine, for tonight, a temporary refuge. I sat on the edge of the lumpy mattress, the silence of the room deafening. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through contacts. My parents, they panic, want to come over, make a scene. My friends. They wouldn't understand the depth of this. They'd offer platitudes, tell me to leave her, as if it were that simple. This wasn't just about a marriage failing. This was about something far more insidious. I thought about Sarah's parents. They were good people, kind, but also conventional. They lived a quiet life in Florida, devoted to their garden and their church. I doubted they would have any insight into this new Sarah, the Sarah who conducted secret rituals in her basement. A wave of despair washed over me, so potent it felt physical. I was adrift, utterly alone, with no clear path forward. The anger that had been my fuel for hours began to recede, replaced by a gnawing emptiness. I had loved Sarah, truly, deeply loved her. I had built my life around her, around our family. And now, she was a stranger, a convert to a cause I didn't understand, a cause that seemed to hold her in thrall. I stayed awake for hours, the motel room's cheap clock ticking away the minutes with agonizing slowness. I replayed every conversation, every interaction, searching for the moment the shift began, the subtle signs I'd missed. Her fascination with crystals, the endless yoga classes, the holistic approach to everything from parenting to cooking. I'd dismissed it all as her trying to find balance, to de-stress from the pressures of our lives. I hadn't seen it for what it was, a gradual shedding of her old self, a preparation for something new. By dawn, a grim determination had settled over me. I couldn't just run. I had to face this. I had to get that journal. I had to understand the scope of Elias's influence, the extent of Sarah's commitment. I had to figure out how to get my children out of harm's way. I checked out of the motel, the bland anonymity of the transaction a welcome relief. I drove back towards our house, my heart pounding a nervous rhythm against my ribs. The morning was cool and crisp, the sun rising in a blaze of orange and pink, a stark contrast to the turmoil raging within me. I parked a few blocks away again, making my way to the house on foot. The front door was still locked, the curtains drawn. It looked exactly as it always did, a picture-perfect suburban home, a facade of normalcy. But I knew what lay beneath. I let myself in quietly, the house still holding its hushed, sleeping air. Lily and Noah were still asleep, their breathing soft and steady. Sarah was nowhere to be seen. I tiptoed towards the kitchen, my senses on high alert. The journal, it was still on the counter, exactly where I'd left it.
My hands trembled as I picked it up. The leather felt cool against my skin. I opened it, the pages filled with Sarah's urgent, fervent script. I scanned through the entries, looking for anything that might offer a clue, a timeline, a plan of action. And then I saw it, an entry dated for today, just a few hours from now. Elias has confirmed the final alignment. The veil will be lifted at precisely noon.
Daniel's resistance will be the final catalyst. His fear will fuel the ascension. He must be present. His presence is vital for the total dissolution of the material plane. My blood ran cold. Noon. Today. Elias had confirmed it, and I was meant to be there. A catalyst. My fear was the fuel. The total dissolution of the material plane. It sounded like a mass suicide, a cosmic suicide. They were planning something catastrophic, and I was meant to play a part, willingly or unwillingly. Panic seized me. I couldn't let this happen. I couldn't let Sarah, my children, or anyone else be a part of this madness. I had to stop it. But how? The basement, the collective, they were organized, devoted. Confronting them directly would be suicide. My eyes darted around the kitchen, searching for anything, any idea. And then I saw it, the pantry door. I remembered Sarah's meticulous organization, her labeling system for everything. Among the jars of spices and cans of soup, there was a small box labeled emergency supplies. I'd always assumed it was for power outages or minor disasters. I opened the pantry door, my heart hammering. Inside, amidst the mundane items, I found a first aid kit, a few bottles of water, some granola bars, and tucked away in the corner, beneath a bag of flour, was a small metal lockbox. It was heavier than it looked. I'd never seen it before. It was padlocked. I looked at the journal again. Was there anything in here about this box? I flipped through the pages, my eyes scanning for any mention of hidden valuables, of safekeeping. Nothing. But the date, noon today, loomed like a death sentence. I needed a key, or a way to break it open. I rummaged through the junk drawer in the kitchen, my hands shaking. Screwdrivers, pliers, an old hammer, nothing that looked like it would open a sturdy metal lock. Then a flicker of memory. Sarah had a small collection of antique keys inherited from her grandmother. She kept them in a little velvet pouch tucked away in her jewelry box. It was a long shot, but it was my only shot. I raced upstairs, my footsteps echoing in the silent house. I went to our bedroom, my gaze falling on Sarah's dresser. I opened the jewelry box, the usual assortment of necklaces and bracelets glinting in the dim light. And there, nestled amongst the baubles, was the small, worn velvet pouch. My fingers fumbled with the drawstring, my breath catching in my throat. I tipped the contents into my palm. A dozen or so old, ornate keys, their metal dulled with age. Which one? I had no idea. I hurried back down to the kitchen, the lockbox heavy in my hand. I tried the keys one by one, the metallic clink against the padlock a desperate, futile sound. Each failed attempt fueled my growing panic. 10 keys down, 2 left. The last key was slightly larger than the others, with an intricate, almost floral design on its head. I inserted it into the padlock. It slid in smoothly. I turned it. Click. The lock sprang open. My hands were slick with sweat as I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded silk, was not money or jewelry, but a small, thick envelope sealed with wax and a single folded piece of paper. I picked up the paper first. It was a deed to a property, a small, secluded cabin nestled deep in the woods, miles from anywhere. It was signed over to me, with no explanation, no date, just my name. It was a contingency, a way out. My eyes fell on the sealed envelope. It was addressed to me, in Sarah's handwriting, but the loops were sharper, more urgent than usual. I broke the wax seal, my heart pounding. Inside, there was a single sheet of paper. It was a letter. "Daniel," it began. The words swam before my eyes. "If you are reading this, then I have failed. Or perhaps I have succeeded in a way I never intended. I never wanted you to find out this way. I never wanted to hurt you or the children. But Elias, he is a force of nature. He sees things, Daniel, things we cannot. He has shown me the truth, the illusion of this material existence. He has shown me the path to true freedom, to ascension. For months I have struggled. I have tried to reconcile the life we have, the love I have for you and the children, with the profound understanding Elias has gifted me.
He says our attachments to this plane, to our earthly lives, are what bind us. He says that to truly ascend, we must shed these burdens. He believes you are a critical part of the process. He sees your resistance not as defiance, but as a powerful anchor to this reality. He believes your fear, your confusion, when amplified, will create the energetic disruption needed for the final shift. He has convinced me that your presence is necessary. It is the ultimate sacrifice, the breaking of the final chain that binds us to this world. But even as he spoke, a part of me rebelled. A part of me, the part that loved you, the part that saw Lily's smile and Noah's bright eyes, knew this was wrong. Elias's vision is pure, but it is also cold. It requires the obliteration of everything I hold dear. I have left this here, with the deed to the cabin, because I could not bear to go through with it without giving you a chance to escape, a chance to save yourself, a chance to save the children. He believes I am already free. He believes my love for you is an illusion I must shed. But he is wrong. My love for you, for our children, is not an illusion. It is the truest thing I have ever known. When I went downstairs this morning to prepare for the final ritual, I saw you. I saw the fear in your eyes, the confusion, and in that moment, I knew I could not be a part of destroying you. I could not be a part of destroying us. I am going to the basement alone. I will tell Elias that my final attachment, my earthly love, is too strong to break. I will tell him that I cannot be the catalyst he needs. I don't know what he will do. I don't know if he will believe me.
I don't know if you will let me leave, but I have to try. I have to try to save you. If you are reading this, then I am either gone or I have been stopped. Take the deed. Take the children. Run. Do not look back. Do not try to find me. My choice is made. My sacrifice, if it is to be, is for you, for your freedom, for your lives. With all my love, always. Sarah. Tears streamed down my face, hot and fast, blurring the ink on the page. Sarah. My Sarah. She had been fighting. She had been trying to save me, trying to save us all along. The basement ritual, the chanting, the certainty in her eyes, it had all been a performance, a desperate gambit to give me time, to give me an escape. She had been playing along, letting Elias believe she was a true convert, all the while planning her own act of defiance. I looked at the deed, at the envelope, at the open lockbox. The weight of her sacrifice, her desperate courage, settled upon me. She was walking into the lion's den, alone, to buy us time. The thought of her facing Elias, facing his power without me by her side, was a physical ache. But she had given me a chance. She had given me a choice, and I wouldn't squander it. I gathered the deed and the letter, my hands still shaking, but with a newfound urgency, not just fear. I looked at Noah's door, then at Lily's. They were safe, for now, but they wouldn't be for long. Elias would eventually realize Sarah's deception. He would come looking. I tiptoed into their rooms, gently rousing them. They stirred, groggy and confused. "Time to go, guys," I whispered, my voice thick with unshed tears. "We're going on a little adventure." Lily, her eyes still heavy with sleep, looked at me with a child's trusting gaze. Noah, always more curious, immediately sat up. "Where are we going, Dad?" "Somewhere safe," I said, scooping Lily into my arms. "Somewhere far away from here." We gathered a few essentials, clothes, their favorite toys, a blanket. I didn't dare go back to the master bedroom. I didn't dare look at Sarah's side of the bed. The house, our home, felt like a tomb, a monument to a love that was now being tested by the ultimate sacrifice. As we walked out the front door, the morning sun felt like a brand on my skin. I didn't look back at the house, at the life that had been built and then shattered within its walls. My focus was on the road ahead, on the deed clutched in my hand, on the children's warm bodies pressed against me. The cabin, a new beginning, a sanctuary. The drive was long and silent,
punctuated only by the children's occasional sleepy questions. I spoke little, my mind a whirlwind of Sarah's letter, of Elias's chilling words, of the unknown fate of the woman I loved. Each mile we put between us and our old life felt like a breath of fresh air, tinged with the bittersweet scent of sacrifice. We reached the cabin late in the afternoon. It was exactly as the deed described, remote, secluded, surrounded by ancient trees.
It was rustic, simple, but it felt like a fortress, a place where we could finally exhale. As I tucked the children into makeshift beds, their innocent trust a weight on my soul, I looked out the dusty window at the dense forest. The silence here was different. Not the suffocating silence of deception, but the profound, natural silence of the wilderness. A silence that promised peace and a chance to heal. I sat down at the rough-hewn table, the deed and Sarah's letter spread out before me. Her sacrifice, her act of rebellion. It was the only thing that had saved us. I didn't know if she was alive, if she had escaped, or if Elias had succeeded in breaking her. But I knew this. She had chosen me, chosen us, over her own enlightenment. She had chosen love. The tears came again, not of despair, but of a profound, aching gratitude, and a grief that was both ancient and new. I had lost the life I thought I had, but I had found something else, a resilience I didn't know I possessed, a love that had proven itself to be the strongest force of all. The sun began to set, casting long shadows through the trees. I looked at my children, their faces peaceful in the fading light. We were alive, we were together, and for now, that was enough. The road ahead was uncertain. The scars of the past would undoubtedly linger. But as I took my first shaky breath in this new, wild place, I knew one thing for sure. We would survive. We would live. And we would carry Sarah's love with us, a silent, guiding light in the encroaching darkness.